Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to be reviewing Spongebob Squarepants, the Patrick Star game on the Nintendo Switch. However, it's not going to be your traditional review on the channel because my experience with the game was definitely not a traditional one. Now just in case you don't know this about me, about every Friday night I stream a brand new Switch game on the channel to try it out, see if it's worth picking up, or even if it's worth reviewing. And although not every game that I play on stream ends up being a stellar game, something that has almost never happened in the 3+ years that I've been doing this is having to stop playing a game either because it was so bad or, as in the case of the Patrick Star game, actually started making me and some viewers feeling sick.
Okay, yeah, I'm done. I'm done. Officially done. Whew. Okay. No, not.
And that's going to be a huge part of today's review, because in my opinion, the game shouldn't even be available on the Nintendo Switch. So now let's jump in, and don't forget, if you are liking the content, hit that like button. Now, just before we get into everything, I do want to mention that although I stopped playing it on stream after about 20 minutes, the next day I did put in another 2.5 hours. Now, this isn't the first Spongebob Squarepants game to release on the Nintendo Switch. And although I would say all the entries have had technical difficulties on the Nintendo Switch, I still had high hopes for this new game, hoping that they would just refine the engine and release something that was even better than the previous games, because even with their flaws, the previous games were nonetheless pretty fun. But not only that, the Patrick Star game is actually not a platformer. It's an open world sandbox game where you get to explore Bikini Bottom. And you know what? I saw a lot of potential in this idea, especially if there was an overlapping storyline, sort of like a quirky and funny version of a GTA game, although on a much smaller scale. Well, unfortunately, that's absolutely not what we're getting here. What you actually get is an open world sandbox that is just a combination of a bunch of small mini games. And there is really absolutely no overarching storyline bringing all of these minigames together, other than the fact that you sort of have to grind to eventually get access to the fry cook games. So the whole game is just about going through these different minigames to acquire currency to eventually get access to some more minigames. So we haven't even gotten into the technical difficulties yet, and already you can see that the premise of the game is boring, repetitive, and just overall unappealing. But wait, then you could wonder, if at least these minigames are fun, or well put together, or really interesting and challenging, maybe you still got some potential here. Unfortunately there, yet again, the answer is absolutely not. Most of these games are extremely simple, not challenging whatsoever, and ultimately end up just feeling like busy work. For example, you might have to clear out Squidward's favorite sunbathing spot, where you pick up some random item and you just basically have to push everything outside of the zone. On other occasions, you're going to have to clean buildings for Sandy in an almost power wash simulator style of gameplay. Or then again, an absolutely terrible ripoff of Pilot Wings parachute game. Now, this isn't a total list of all the games available. There are more games than this, but most of them come down to 1 or 2 button games that are extremely simple and unfortunately just not very compelling. In reality, there was maybe only one that was somewhat fun, which was a sort of ripoff of Overcooked where you had to build burgers. But even that one was extremely hard to play due to the performance of this game, which we're going to be getting into very soon. But you know what's really sad about all this? It's a ton of wasted potential. Because Bikini Bottom as a whole, when you look at it without the technical flaws here, was actually pretty well put together. Almost all the characters from the show are present in some format, and the voice acting isn't terrible.
No, Patrick, I wanted to do something nice for you, so I made a scavenger hunt with...
And had they made an overarching mission-based storyline here, you know what? They could have delivered something really fun. And maybe to give the game a tiny bit of praise, at least you can unlock different costumes for Patrick as you're playing through the game, and a lot of them are pretty iconic. So now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, the performance of the game on the Nintendo Switch. Now, I've looked at gameplay on other systems, and on other systems, the game actually seems to run pretty well. However, on the Nintendo Switch, the performance is absolutely terrible. And that's why at the beginning of the video, I said, I don't think this game should even be on the Nintendo Switch. The frame rate and frame pacing is extremely inconsistent. There's pop-up all over the game, but the absolute worst here is the camera. The camera just can't keep up with the action. It keeps getting lost in objects, changing viewpoint randomly, and it's jittery as hell. And that, combined with the absolutely terrible frame rate at different parts of the game, is what gave me motion sickness. Now, this performance does vary a lot depending on what part of Bikini Bottom you're in. However, as soon as you get into a densely populated section of the city, or during some of the more populated activities, it is extremely bad, making it that even some of the minigames, in my opinion, are unplayable. Now, the worst ones for me during the game were the driving sections, where the pop-in and the camera was going insane. The SpongeBob theme park section was also extremely difficult to play through due to the absolutely tanking frame rate and once again, the camera that would just get lost in buildings. But once again, there was a winner for the worst minigame here, and that was the Hammer Smash Alley, where you're supposed to go around smashing different objects, and honestly, you couldn't even tell what was happening most of the time. And when playing through these awful sections, I actually had to put down the controller for a few minutes after each one of them, just so that the motion sickness would wear off. And I ended up giving up after about 2.5 hours, because you know what? It just isn't worth it. Now, at this point, you might be asking yourself, maybe they'll patch the game, maybe it'll get better in the future. But as I said in the beginning of the video, even if they patch everything out here and the performance actually becomes decent on the Nintendo Switch, the base game itself is still, in my opinion, just bad. And to add insult to injury here, do you know what the sales price of this game is? They're trying to sell this game for $39.99. Now, I've played broken indie games before, but most of the time you're paying like $5 or less for those games. It's still not all right, but at least they're not trying to gouge $40 out of you for what should be a $10 kids game. Because overall, that is the only public that I could see that would like to play this game, even if the performance was okay. Young kids who like Spongebob Squarepants. Unfortunately, most of the people that actually grew up with the original show, none of this gameplay will be interesting to you. This is a pure example of a company trying to use a very well-known IP for a quick cash grab. And that's why I'll be giving this game a 2 out of 10. It isn't completely broken, but it is barely tolerable. So hopefully this video saved you some time and money. Now, I'm not going to ask you in the comments down below if you're picking up the Patrick Star game, because honestly, you just shouldn't. But instead, why not let me know what other game you'll actually be playing this week? And don't forget on the way out to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and click on that notification bell so you know when all my future content comes out. And as usual, I hope I'll see you in my next video.